We wanted to start off kind of with a fun topic, maybe one that's a little bit topical for us right now, which is the idea of AI slop. AI slop is kind of an internet term right now for images, video, text, things that are created by AI, by LLMs that are being seen as in poor tastes or in bad tastes, low effort or no effort. Meanwhile, the idea of automated content creation, which is maybe a synonym for this phenomenon, is something that for the past few years has been sold or presented to the localization world as one of the new possibilities of revenue generating activities, value creating activities, either for new clients or for existing clients in the space. I just wanted to kind of get you guys' opinion on this. Now that we do have somewhat, at least of a humorous backlash against this phenomenon with the idea of AI slop, do we think that this is a problem, either personally, something that's bothersome, or something that's potentially harmful for our clients? Let's start off with Dan from Blackbird. What is your view on this issue?
I mean, the slop is real. We've seen the pictures with the people with the 6 or 7 fingers that are running around, and of people just running with them. So we know what is possible with AI from a bad standpoint, but I think with every risk comes opportunity as well, right? So I think we need to be engaging customers further in their process upstream to identify opportunities where we could be leveraging AI plus human in the loop for content creation, as opposed to the traditional. We've been kind of on the back end in the localization industry where we're getting the content slop and having to translate it towards the back end. Now this gives us an opportunity to at least have the conversation of saying, hey, let's pair some AI earlier in your process with humans, because it's still needed, and then at least drive the conversation, because I do think that the enterprise customers are looking for content creation in the future to be more part of their localization process. It's not quite there yet, but having the conversations is worthwhile, and we can do it in a humorous fashion of saying, hey, you could just implement your AI solution right now and you would get this, but partnered with someone who knows localization, who knows the challenges and the pitfalls to upstream this. I think it creates a really good opportunity for local companies that are out there.
Great. Aaron is somebody there, and we localized it. Maybe has visibility to a large client base. From your perspective, does this issue have any importance from where you're sitting?
I think localization buyers are, or companies that are producing content, let's say more generally, I think they have a pretty wide-eyed view of this. What I see is expanding definitions of what is fit for purpose in the marketplace, right? So I think in the past, we've had a pretty monolithic idea of everything has to be perfect translation quality. And I think that we're often applying a similar lens to generated content, that it has to be perfect. But the reality is that there is an almost insatiable demand for content in the world. We don't know if this is a permanent state or if this is just human beings reacting like animals to the new feeding trough of content that exists. But there is definitely demand for content out there. And the AI gives content generating clients a new tool to rapidly augment the amount of content that they're producing. I think that what we will see is market forces defining what is good enough and what is not good enough. And very specific feedback loops where these people who are producing content are not just going to generate content, throw it out there, and then just keep producing slop. They're going to find better models. As we evolve through new generations of LLMs, the models are going to get better at producing the kinds of content that humans want. And they'll also get better at doing different kinds of RAG approaches that would allow them to then see what is this supposed to look like, use a point of reference to produce something that's good. So I guess I see expanding demand, opportunity for all of the above, including Slop. And let's be honest, just to be clear, I think Dan, you alluded to this, Slop has existed in the past. It's not new that there's Slop. Everybody who's in this industry knows that there's lots of sloppiness, let's say, in content creation in the first place that we deal with. And I think that then we've got a lot of market forces that are going to align along with the technology evolution to guide this to where it needs to go. I don't think we need to micromanage it, basically, as a solution provider.
Okay, great. Henrique, I noticed while I was researching the BureauWorks platform that you guys have a lot of new kind of tools based around LLMs in some cases that are able to use generative text capabilities as part of the QA workflow. Is generative image or generated video also something that it's on the roadmap for your company and in terms of the products that you're looking to roll out?
Yeah, so just going back to touch upon the Slop thing is,
sure.
I think the idea that if you start from scratch in a broad sense with the models that we have, we're going to see a huge variation depending on the language and depending on the model. That if you just go to an LLM and say, write me an essay on World War II, probably going to get very good content, but it will have that fingerprint of something generated, right? It's easier to spot videos and images in the wild, in ads and stuff, and you kind of feel fuzzy about it because you're gonna think, well, I'm seeing an AI image clearly. You know how you really feel about it, right? But I like to make a distinction in the localization context because we're not starting from scratch, right? So we are transforming text or sometimes even sound and image into something else. So it offers like a framework, like a wireframe that gives you a good limitation, a good set of boundaries to work in. And I think that makes a big difference. And I think that's what we are exploring in the development of the new tools that we have. It's essentially being able to leverage neural machine translation, as we've known for, I don't know, almost 10 years now. Context from clients. We are using vector databases as well. So trying to bring together a lot of ideas, the RAG models, into fruition, into really making something useful in the case, like I said, translation. Regarding video and images, I think there are, I think it goes back to a point that Aaron mentioned, is that it depends on the case, right? Fit for purpose in a way, because maybe it's acceptable, the quality of an image translation, for example, because we've seen, we're doing tests and we're starting to use that more and more. And the quality, I wouldn't say is 100% yet. But maybe for the purpose of that document, or the purpose of that project, it's good. Just being able to translate an image without going to Illustrator and a CAD tool and going back and putting it all together, creating a PNG. If you can do it automatically inside your editor, your multi-model tool, that's probably a better experience if the outcome is welcomed by by the stakeholders. So yes, I think it's natural that image, audio, and video are in everyone's roadmap. I think video is a little bit of pretty much associated with marketing initiatives and being able to generate ads and stuff like that, very short videos. But again, I think that's a function of a more broad use of AI beyond the localization framework of the localization mindset.
Okay, great. Now that we're on the subject of your platform particularly, I wanted to go through with all three of us here And I was kind of interested in a little bit about the emergence of new definitions of what, how we work with platforms, how we're working with AI tools. For me, it's particularly interesting to see when new kinds of names for activities are popping up based on new kinds of functionality. And I kind of want to go through all three product bases and kind of get your feel for what those things are. Henrique, in the case of 𝗕_𝗔, I noticed that you guys have a concept in your QA capabilities that are called smells. Can you just maybe talk a little bit about what the smells are and what that means?
Yeah. So yeah, our engineering team, especially one engineer, the head of engineering, director of engineering, he came up with the idea of smells because in engineering, in software development, we have code smells, right? The concept of there's something wrong here. When we started using it, it was very interesting that it generated a little bit of a, why are you calling it smells? Does it smell? Like, is it a bad smell or stuff like that? So from the get-go, it was interesting how people perceived what we were showing. But at the end of the day, is that QA is rule-based, right? We have QA too. You need to be able to block or point out certain problems like glossary problems and tags and stuff like that. But I think smells goes beyond that because in the very beginning, we started doing semantic analysis, which is different. We're not just looking at the grammar and at the syntax of words and sentences. We're looking at the context, like a before and after. Is that really what you're talking about? Are you sure this? Because sometimes it will fly through the QA checks, the normal QA checks, but just based on the previous, if you think about a traditional CAD tool, if you think about the first 5 segments and the next 5, you're looking at a translation, say, hey, this doesn't make sense, basically. So the smells is a pure application of AI, LLMs, and using the client's database like glossaries and translation memories to say, hey, are you really talking about this? Are you sure that this client in this industry really wants to say this in this language, this tone? So I think it's a very smart application of the technology that goes beyond the QA check.
Okay, so is it safe to say that's kind of like a red flag for potential warnings that are based on style or semantic errors?
Yeah, I mean, it is in a way, because what we are evolving into is that basically it helps you find deviation. Let's say that you have because in traditional setups, you have maybe a guideline that you read or is available to you in real time. And it's up to you to decide whether you're going to use that guideline, right? And I think what LLMs are good at are getting that soup of words and saying, hey, the guideline clearly states that you should be formal and the audience is, executives and stuff like that. But you are being very informal and you're using certain words in a certain way that are not in accordance to the guideline. So I think the smells system allows us to really look at many facets of the translation process and automatically find these deviations. So I think that's where it's very different from the QA checks, because it looks at the whole body and say, hey, I have a lot of information here, and maybe you should consider this, this, and that. So it looks at everything and tries to guide you through the process.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Dan, let's switch over to you now on this one. I've had a few opportunities to look through and have some live demos of the Blackbird platform. And one of the things that one notices automatically is that the framework for how to do work is very different from traditional localization platforms, meaning the idea that you're able to string together different components into a new workflow that you're essentially inventing as a user. And obviously that's a new maybe use case and potentially a new user type. Do you think that, or are you seeing that there are potentially new types of users or new job descriptions, new ways of thinking that are maybe finding a footing on your platform and its ways of working?
Yeah, I mean, so Blackbird, of course, is a content transformation, content orchestration platform meant to connect the different systems to be able to create content or generate new content or manipulate content, translate content, all those things. In fact, we have an integration with BureauWorks, right, where BureauWorks can be the starting point of the process, or it could be a CMS that is the starting point, and it goes into BureauWorks, does some stuff there, and then sends it to Blackbird to do more stuff. It really is about that concept of solution architecting, workflow architecting. So I think the key users of Blackbird are the people that can process map really well, like understand how the process should look like, and then have enough of the technical understanding to put the Lego blocks together inside of Blackbird. It's all interconnected, right? A file is created here or downloaded here, and it's got to pass through this step to be processed in the next step. It really is just connecting those dots. When I'm talking about Blackbird with potential new customers, they're like, oh, how many users do we need to add to your platform? And the answer is probably not many. Like, our goal is that the majority of your users are just living in their own ecosystem, doing their thing. They're working in a TMS, or they're working in a business management solution or a CMS, and they're just doing their jobs. And Blackbird in the background is picking up on those events, picking up on those triggers, and that's where the magic kind of happens behind the scenes. So I think that the users that we're seeing, the new job titles, the new roles, it's a variation of a loc engineer / solutions architect, but very process minded. If you asked me to do a demo right now of Blackbird and I didn't have an idea of what I was demoing, it would take me a bit to like, okay, what do I want to show you? Because the possibilities are endless. But if you have a process, like if I was a little puppeteer here and someone was saying, all right, I want to pull content from here and I want to machine translate it and do quality estimation and do automatic post editing. If someone was telling me what to do, easy, drag and drop, build the process. But it really, you have to have that almost process mindset. And those are the people I think are going to succeed in this orchestration level of our industry.
Great. Wonderful. Aaron, same question for you. Either with the Welocalize's Opal platform or with other of your product offerings, what kind of new ways of working or new types of working situations are you maybe involved with right now?
One of the things that we're really concerned with is the idea of context. So we're learning that both for humans, we already know, I think translators have been telling us for years that they need more and more context, right? In old school localization, it was like, can you give me all the documentation? Can I read all of the things? Can I do all of the things? There's a reason why humans ask for that, is because context matters. And so we're also finding that in AI, context matters. It matters that the LLM understands more broadly what they're dealing with. And I think there's real opportunity there with LLMs, especially with the newer models, to provide a lot more information, a lot more context for the LLM to make smart decisions. So I think that's an area that we're finding interesting for research and development. I think another area that's really pretty interesting is thinking about, again, I mentioned before, fit for purpose. So what is the objective here? I think with lots of new opportunities, there's also new endpoints for the processing of content. And so that's a really key consideration for us, is really rethinking, is DQFMQM, for example, is that the only way to think about quality? Is that the right way to think about quality? And then as we're looking at performance of our various different Opal tools, we want to look at it through that lens. We don't want to simplify this or overgeneralize the universe into one way of thinking about fit for purpose. We want to be able to be a bit more granular about that and then have an ability to tune what we're doing to the particular outputs that are required for business requirements. I think that's what our clients have always wanted. And I think that there's an opportunity to really dig into that now. Another area I think that's pretty important is thinking about fully automated solutions versus human in the loop, right? So those are two different kinds of solutions that are important in the industry. There are content streams that require human intervention in one way or another. And there are other content streams that are, clients just want to push content, right? That they may in the past have been content to simply push raw machine translations, right? Untrained machine translations. Then moving up to a trained engine, trained neural model. And now to the idea, well, is there a world where AI can produce a good enough, fit for purpose, again, defining what that end objective is. So thinking about what is fit for purpose, whether there's a human in the loop or not is important. And then when there is a human in the loop, what is that human's role in this future state, right? And there, I think there is a need to really rethink what is the role of expertise in the work that we're doing. And I think this applies to the generated content question too, right? Where we have clients saying, I'm just going to generate all my stuff in French from now on. We're not doing a linear path between a source and the target. We're just going to generate. Again, in either case, I think increasingly we're seeing that there's a need for someone who actually knows what that subject matter is about to provide input as to how well did the translation perform, the AI model for translation, and is it fit for purpose? To be clear, this is not by any way saying that there's not a role for linguists here. There is a role for linguists to play in helping to understand how do we get the machines to produce the right kinds of output. But it's a different role. It's a human in a data loop, right? And thinking about how our data flows rather than how content flows. I think that's an important way to rethink this. Data movement, humans' role in verifying, editing, producing data and insights for further training and refinement of the systems.
All right, thank you very much, Aaron. I'd like to pose a new question to the panel here. And I'd like to reference a book that's a bit famous in our industry, which is called The General Theory of the Translation Company by Renato Beninato and Tucker Johnson. One of the interesting ideas in the book is that there are 3 core activities in a translation company, and none of those core activities is translation. The idea of the 3 core activities is vendor management, project management, and sales. And in their definition of the company, there are then 7 support activities, and none of those support activities are translation either. The closest one to translation is what they call QA, which is an interesting idea. I think it's an interesting idea to omit the activity of translation from the key roles that are happening in a translation company. But let's accept for a minute that this is an accurate assessment of what a translation company does, being essentially project management, vendor management, and sales. Most of the innovation that we're seeing with AI tools are focused on linguistic production and maybe to a lesser extent QA. So I'd like to pose the question to the panel. Do we agree that AI is being underutilized in some of these other areas within the language service companies? Are we missing opportunities to apply AI to vendor management, project management, sales? Let's start with you, Dana. What do you think, since your platform specifically has some ways maybe to deal with these issues?
Yeah, I have the book on my shelf, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, listen, I think, and I've spent time with Renato too, and I've discussed this with him. Is we're in the solutions business, so I do think that it is this concept of project management and vendor management, but you're providing your sales as a solution, right? You're trying to provide that solution, and all those support things that go into it are probably being underutilized with AI at this point in time. I do think the main focus is on how do we make our products, translations cheaper by using, post editing and machine translation and so forth. But I've seen some use cases from some of our customers where they're looking at those surrounding processes and identifying, it's like, yeah, you know, how do we optimize our sales process? How do we optimize data entry processes into our tools, right? So one of the challenges is, you know, to Aaron's point, like, you know, we're in the business of moving data around. Well, data is king, and if the data that's going into your ecosystem is garbage, then garbage in, garbage out. So you add a new customer into your CRM, right? Well, you can use AI to be fleshing out, adding elements to your CRM, doing some research on things, and removing some of the data entry burden from the people that are entering that, removing some of the errors, some of the mistakes that could be made. And you have a human still can oversee that. And so, you know, then that can build out a good customer profile that can flow into the project management group, that can flow into, you know, context for linguists that are working on it. So I do think that the surrounding processes are just as important, especially with, you know, in certain industries. There's still a lot of manual file prep that's being done out there. And, you know, it's probably more, some enterprise companies probably spending more on DTP than they are translation. And so you can say, it's like, man, if we can focus some of our time and attention on, you know, file prep and file engineering and you know, utilizing AI to help, you know, build a better mousetrap there, you're probably going to even see more profitability on those services that you're selling, as opposed to, we're still kind of stuck in this per word rate in our industry. You're seeing minimal gains on that. But, you know, surrounding processes, I think, are underutilized with AI, and I think have a huge potential to be profitable if we focus some time and attention on it.
Okay, great. Henrique, how does ViroWorks look at this issue in terms of getting more exposure to other areas within the language service clients, not just linguistic production?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was, as we were like formulating the questions and hearing the first comments from Dan, it's interesting. I just wanted to go back to the book where the no translation thing is interesting, because in ViroWorks I think we came to the realization that in many use cases, starting from target, as we formally think, is actually the beginning of the process, meaning that there is a good amount of work that between AI and NMT and context, and I'm generalizing context and automated smells that we apply in certain workflows. The translator, or the person responsible for the content, is much more maybe specialized in the subject matter, which goes back to the point that I think Aaron raised, than a more traditional translation process where you are trying to map linearly sentence by sentence. So you really focusing on the message, right? So I think it's an interesting thing, because with what we are doing right now with free flow and everything, I think it's a realization moment where we see, there are many cases, many use cases where the target is actually the beginning of the process. So the person doesn't have to look at trying to make sure that the map is correct. They will look at the content and understand if it's correct, right? Because previous experiences with pure machine translation, you read something and you will see it's off. So you have to go back and try to understand. Now, to the other applications, it's also funny, because before LLMs really blew up 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, we were actually developing a lot of AI applications focused on vendor management, meaning that we're looking at many variables to make sure that a person, when is allocated to a job, has not only the right price, price per word, the rate, but also the qualifications, the history, the affinity with the client's content, so the weather in Tokyo, and all kinds of variables that you can use to try to predict the outcome of translation. So before the application of LLMs in ViroWorks, we did a lot of research and applications developing model for vendor management. And that was a very interesting thing because we really saw that, especially some languages, you could really find, let's say, a lot of hidden quality in the output, in the resulting text, based on those studies. Being able to apply those techniques to go to a higher quality translation in the end. So I think it's there. Maybe it's not as evident as the buzz that AI brings with, the transformation of words and, like you said before, images and creation, video creation, which is pretty amazing. But there are even statistical models that are not proper or advanced AI applications, but they have a lot of value. They can add a lot of value in vendor management, in project management, optimizing costs, and being able to identify patterns that will trigger notifications to ticketing systems and CRMs and integrations that were present in BioWorks from the very beginning. So I think the applications are there. Maybe they just don't have the same appeal of the LLM applications that we see right now.
Okay, great. Aaron, what's your take on this issue?
So I guess, first off, I do think that LLMs have fundamentally changed the entire landscape for localization companies, and I'm not certain that the way that the book describes the role of LSPs is valid anymore. I believe that in the past, there was an assumption that we use neural MT and then humans do post-editing. And in that world, we're vendor managers, we're all of the above. I don't think that's the world that we're moving forward. I believe that there is an opportunity to reimagine what is content transformation, what is global content delivery. And Welocalize, I think, is really at the forefront of thinking about how do we redefine global content delivery and not think of ourselves as an AI-enabled vendor.
Well, just to wind up here, I'd like to thank everybody again for being on the panel. We've talked a lot about some of the rose-tinted, positive, utopian situations involving AI that we'd like to get into and we'd like to get our clients into. Now let's just talk about some of the bad stuff as we wind up here. What do we think are some of the worst aspects of AI, or maybe the most overhyped aspects of AI at the moment? Aaron, anything to add on this subject here?
Yeah, I have thoughts on this. I don't know that it's any one particular thing that I think is overhyped. I do think that there is, running an R&D organization and a team that is attempting to bring models to market in ways that are predictable and meaningful. I believe that there is an underestimation of the complexity of creating something that works reliably at scale. Anybody can go into an LLM and do a prompt and be like, oh my God, it can do it. It can do it. It can do the thing. But can it do it 500,000 times across 200 different languages, 24 hours a day across every geography and all of these things? So and again, this is not, we welcome the challenge. I think it's cool that we have all of these new tools available, but I do believe that generally humans have an underestimation of, just because it works once in ChatGPT does not make it a product, and it does not make it something that is necessarily scalable. So I think we need to be mindful of that and not simply assume that everything is going to work at scale. The other thing is just the availability of data to be able to do this work. So again, we often, when we want to try to build a new AI solution, we need to have a standard against which we can measure whether it worked or not. And that sometimes can be difficult to find. I think a lot of organizations struggle to have really good data flows and data management. And now, after years of data management, we all, I think most most organizations reckon with then where the gaps in the data, and that then affects the ability to build AI. So I think that's really the biggest thing, that there's a lot of hype around flashes in the pan versus something that is truly striking gold and something that's going to produce value over time.
Okay, wonderful. Henrique, same question to you. What is the most overhyped or the most useless thing going on right now in terms of AI adoption or investigation?
I'll just quickly touch on one thing, which is video generation from nothing. I think it's interesting. It's beautiful sometimes, but it's far from really useful. That's my hot take on video right now. Next week, if somebody watches this video and say, yeah, right, everything changed, right? There's a new model, blah, blah, blah. But one that I think is important to me is that I think is overhyped, is companies and news that we see trying to find a correlation of the AI usage, the AI application, the AI introduction in corporations, and the ability of that process to substitute people, to substitute humans. So I think we see a lot of news, especially in my area, in development, in software engineering, like, hey, oh, Microsoft fired so many people because now they think that AI can replace I don't know how many people, and we see a lot of Salesforce is very strong on that message too, and we see that across the board, right? We see a lot of that. And I think my hot take is that I think many companies are being very opportunistic about it. They are selling the AI products, they're selling the AI idea, and they are using that a little bit to say, hey, so our AI is so good that we don't need 20% of the people, right? And the parallel that I create to make that point is what happened with Twitter, X, is that they basically laid off 80% of the staff, and they still have a running product. I mean, give or take, it's the same thing, right? So they proved the point where there was maybe some inefficiency there on Twitter, but that was before AI. That was before AI agents and code agents and stuff like that. But I think many companies are being opportunistic in laying off people with the excuse that their AI application or adoption is so good, is so pervasive that they can do that. And I don't buy that face value because I see a lot of superpowers happening in our development team and engineering, but there is a matter of mental bandwidth. Like, people have a certain amount of gray matter that they have to operate with. They cannot 10x overnight. They cannot be really producing like things so fast that will create that systemic effect, if that makes sense.
Sure, absolutely. Dan, do you want to finish up on this one? What do you think is the worst thing going on with AI in terms of your involvement and your perspective right now?
I mean, just thinking that AI is the silver bullet, right? If Aaron touched upon this too, is if you're thinking that you're just going to throw AI into the mix to solve all of your problems, you're just dead wrong. There's tons of automation, there's tons of rule-based things that you're probably missing out in your organization. If you've got organizational problems and you just bring in AI, it's probably going to make things worse. So again, like digital transformation is organizational transformation. You have to look at your key processes. You have to understand what's going on under the hood. Adding AI into that is just another problem you're going to have to deal with. So unless you look at it in the context of your organization and how you're trying to solve problems or solve your customers' problems, be careful. Be careful about what you're doing with AI and maybe focus in more on process automation first, because AI is just another process automation tool at the end of the day. A very powerful one, but it's just another tool in your toolbox that you could be using to make your organization better.
I think it's also important to I think, dispel what is some, not completely untrue, but there is, I think, a lot of hype around the idea of just like humans don't have jobs anymore. Henrique touched on this a bit. And I don't think that that's the case. I think that it is an evolution of the way that humans work, right? And frankly, I think it is an opportunity for more interesting work. for upskilling a wide swath of people who have jobs that often are clicking buttons or not that interesting, but where there is more human potential. And I think that we can harness that and have it be a real opportunity for people to do more interesting work where they're bringing to bear their humanity and not just their ability to reason and calculate and compute. We can have the computers do the drudgery, and then we can have the humans do the more interesting pieces of work. So I think there's real opportunity. I don't think it's as doomsday as people think, but we do have to adapt. Humans are not great at adapting, so there's a risk. But if we can get humans to really lean into the adaptation towards the future, I think there's a really hopeful place generally for AI and also for our industry.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you all very much. We were trying to end on a little bit more of a snarky note, but we wound up with optimism somehow. I'd like to thank you guys all very much for your time, and we are looking forward to the next one.